Welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan C.P. Steele. I will be your nerd today and every other day that you watch one of my silly videos, or go to my TikTok, or my Instagram, or just think back lovingly about something that I may have told you or said in the past. Alright, now that weirdness is out of the way, how are you guys doing? Put in the comments. I'm not just actually talking to a camera for no reason. I want to converse. I want to be part of your lives. I'm a little animated today. I got more sleep than I pretty much ever do. My dogs normally wake me up by like 6 o'clock in the morning to say, hey, we want to go outside and go to the bathroom and maybe have some early breakfast. And that didn't happen today. In fact, they let me sleep all the way until like 8 o'clock. Which is unprecedented. Combine that with the fact that last night I went to bed early. I normally don't get to bed until like 12:30, 1 o'clock pretty much every night. I started drifting like at midnight and headed upstairs and crashed out. I was watching a really cool show on Netflix based off a DC comic called Sweet Tooth. Only a couple episodes in, but it's really cool. It's neat. It's about hybrid animal babies, and I won't do it justice if I talk about it, so I'm not going to. Just, it's good. Check it out. It's interesting. If the first couple episodes don't hook you, then probably, go back to whatever you were watching before. But yeah, so I'm a little animated today. I'm a little amped up because I got like an extra 2.5 hours sleep that I never get. Combination of the fact that I wake up 7 or 8 times a night, or at least it feels that way, because of dreams and bathroom breaks and all that kinds of stuff. Biological weirdness. Because of all of that, I normally only get about 5 or 6 hours sleep a night, unless I'm like sick or my body goes, hey, sleep. So the fact that last night that I got probably close to 7 or 8, I'm bouncing off the walls. Today is the day to come at me, bro. So let's talk. Let's have a moment, or multiple moments, or roughly an hour's worth of moments. The Week in Bryan, easy peasy. Put the final bow on the Adventures in Angel Grove. My portion of the Adventures in Angel Grove adventure series book for the Power Rangers role-playing game. Still got some editing and that kind of stuff that has to happen, and I'm sure the questions will come up as it moves forward. And then when my cohort TJ gets his parts put in, we'll probably need to do some licky sticky cut and paste to make sure everything matches up. But overall, it's done. It's good. I'm happy. I think that the Power Rangers fans out there are going to, I think they're going to be excited about it. I think that especially the people who are just big enough Power Rangers fans that they've been waiting for this kind of stuff. We put enough Easter eggs and little things like that in there that I think that that'll make the slightly more included fan, or slightly more tuned in fan, even happier. Whereas like a regular player who's just like giving it a try, it'll still be a neat scene, or it'll still be a cool NPC to interact with, or a cool moment. It'll have just a little bit more weight for the people who are like, Power Rangers fans. So that's cool. Slogging away on the Shadowrun novel. Little bit late, a little bit behind on when I want that to be done. Sadly, but bills have to get paid, and sometimes things get interjected. Almost wrapped up with some board game narrative, or a board game style thing for Renegade. I can't talk about the game itself under NDA and all that kind of stuff. But it sounds pretty cool as far as like the game engine goes. I'm just doing narrative. I'm just doing lore and narrative writing. The game itself is designed by a completely different person and different team and whatnot. The game and the game's already like done and in playtesting and all that kind of stuff. I'm literally just giving it some skin and some flesh on its bones. But it sounds like a really cool concept, and I think that when it happens, I don't know if it's gonna go to Kickstarter or anything weird like that. Again, decisions made far higher on the food chain than I am, so I don't know about that. But when that comes out, I'll make sure to point and be like, "Hey, go check out my thing that I added story to. Go read my stories and play a fun game." Speaking of fun games and stories and things, currently at Kickstarter right now is the Heroes of Thargos track system card game, which I originally designed and sold to the Cursed Empire people. Chris and Karen and those guys, they skinned the game in their own fashion, did some developmental changes, added a really cool one-player mode. And a cool story mode if you're using it in tandem with the role-playing game. Stuff that I never had really thought about originally when I built the card game, but super cool. I want to say as of this morning, it was a little over like 60% funded. So if you are a fan, if you are a fan of cool things, go follow the link that I've got in the description of this video. And make sure that you show those guys some support, show them some love, and that that's not even just to say because I want to say my card game did well. It's a fun game. It's a very cool system, and I know Chris and Karen and those guys, if this goes well, they've got more Cursed Empire stuff waiting in the wings to just follow up and build on this. This collective idea. If you want to know more, go back to one of my episodes. I don't remember what episode number. I could look it up, but then it would be super unprofessional. Me going, look at this stuff. But yeah, just scroll back. Probably, I think about 10 episodes, give or take. And we had a whole episode dedicated to Cursed Empire and the Heroes of Thargos. So enjoy if you haven't already enjoyed that. Let's see, what else? Got to play the Waking Realms game, which is my friend's homebrew, where I'm my crazy dancing cat monk. Like I mentioned last week, that I think that game is coming to a justifiable end. I think we're getting to the point where we're about ready to like save the queen, save the kingdom, that kind of thing. And in our last session, much to the chagrin of several of my fellow players, or fellow party members, my character is very much bent on the idea of being a force of justice, being a force for good. He's a chaotic good character, and is very much there's a running joke that Batman, that he's a Batman style character, that it's okay to hurt the bad guys, but I'm not going to go out of my way to leave bodies lying in the street, or I would much rather tie people up and leave them for the constables, or that sort of thing, than just leave a wake of dead bandits behind me. In fact, one of our very first sessions was me giving pretty much like reading the riot act to one of our fellow players who murdered in my character's opinion, murdered a defenseless prisoner because they didn't have anything useful to say. But in our last session, I basically used my just blatant optimism, like almost ignorant optimism. Like, we're gonna do great. This is gonna be fabulous because we're the heroes of our own story. And if our story ends now, then so be it. If not, you know, our children's children will talk about us in the future. We're at this like kind of like tent city encampment outside of this, you know, this city that's under siege from monsters from within and whatnot. And the queen is here, and one of our druid friend does a little augury, a little you know, divine. Hey, what's going on? And we are. It is inferred that there could be assassins in this camp trying to deal with the queen. And as soon as that happens, we start being like, well, what are we going to do? And I just basically tell my party members, well, I'm going to go sleep at the queen's house. And they're like, I don't think you're going to be able to go sleep at the queen's tent like that. And I was like, why not? You know, we're here to help her. Well, yeah, well, they're not going to know that. And I was like, well, then let's not be shady about it. Let's be honest and tell her that we're here to save the day. And so my character left. It was a fun scene because the guards, you know, if you think about it, a lot of D&D games, when guards try and stop you, what's your first instinct? Is trying to either get them to leave you alone, lie to them, you know, stop bothering me, that sort of thing. And instead, I leaned into it and was like, well, hey, why don't you come along? I'll tell you how and why we're the big heroes of this story on our way to the queen's tent. And when we get to the queen's tent, you can tell the queen's guards that I'm here to save the day, and everything's going to be great. And it was just the sheer look on, you know, because what do you do as a dungeon master when one of your players is just utterly upfront and positive and not trying to do something nefarious? So like any amount of insight checks or anything like that comes up as, no, he's just this weird naive cat guy who is like, nope, I'm gonna go save the day. Help me save the day, Mr. Guard. You know, unless the guards are corrupt and you're in like this, you know, seedy, gritty world, they really have nothing to argue about. And the dice fell the right direction. I used my persuasion to basically like, hey, believe me, not persuade them to believe me because what I was saying was a lie, but basically persuade them to go, you know, hey, this guy, he really does mean it. He wants to, you know, he's willing to, you know, put his life on the line and save the queen. And so we had this, you know, moment where I slept at the queen's tent, out in front of the queen's tent. I woke up to some mystery coffee, so somebody appreciated my gesture. It was, and then we planned the whole thing, and it sounds like our next session we are going to try our hardest to flush the assassin out by using a fake queen, which, because one of the players is a changeling, is a doppelganger, is the half doppelganger changeling people. So we're going to use him to fake the perfect ambush opportunity and see if we can't get the assassin to come out and deal with and you know, reveal itself, and then it's going to come down to whether or not the rest of my party can keep the bad guys alive long enough for us to actually question them. So that was fun. Played Curse of Strahd last night. So Curse of Strahd, I love the group we're in. I love the character that I'm playing. I love Ravenloft as a setting. I do not believe I like the way Curse of Strahd is written. As a, and, you know, I hate to, I don't mean to down on products. If you're into it, rowdy. I am not a fan of a written adventure being so open that you can have an entire session of what do we do next. It's different when a player group is over questioning things or over planning or making life harder for them than it needs to be. That's one thing. The other side of that coin is when there's just so little information or so few people willing to help because you're in this, you know, Ravenloft is a hellhole. It's a horrible place. Nobody trusts anybody. Everybody knows that the vampire lord runs the universe. And it makes it very difficult to make headway unless you have solid clues. we spent a lot of time last night talking and narrowing it down and finding, basically getting ourselves to a situation where we thought that it was going to be, okay, here's the next big story chunk, and we meet the guy, and he wants nothing to do with us. He's not terribly helpful. He has a little bit of story lore to give us, but overall he's just like, you know, I'm glad that you're against the bad guy, but I don't want to work with you. And it was just so deflating. Like as a group, we thought we had done something big, and it turned out this guy is not what we need. But what did happen by the end of the session, we finally figured out a small clue of something that we think we can go and try and do. And that hopefully will push us forward to being able to do the next step. And then once we get all these steps done, we'll be to the culmination of the adventure. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is that we've finally figured out at least a tiny clue, and now we're hoping that the way that Curse of Strahd is written, that when we get there, it will then start to feel like we're actually making some headway, instead of just brick wall after unsatisfying NPC, which again has nothing to do with the storyteller or the dungeon master. He's doing a great job. In fact, he's doing the best thing that he can with what he's being givered. The hell is that? What he's been given, especially considering several of the player characters are very quiet. They don't really get involved, and some of the people who do get involved in, I don't want to say the wrong ways, but they're definitely not in the most helpful of ways. You know, it's one of those, here, I'm going to hand you this map that might show, totally being figurative, hand this character this map, and this map says this could lead you to the next thing. That particular character goes, yes, perfect, rolls up the map, lights the end of it, and says, we needed a torch to get into the bad guy's house. And it's like, what? Or, you know, someone who is playing up the naivete of their character so far that they're making bad choices on purpose. It's again, Curse of Strahd is very unforgiving. You make mistakes, and those mistakes come back to haunt you, sometimes literally. And for us, it is partially because we're either missing the clues, or sometimes we see a clue and go, we aren't ready for that, and then we pass it up because Curse of Strahd is so open. And our first handful of sessions, we got our butts kicked so hard by doing what the adventure, by doing what normal D&D adventuring parties do. We see something and go, let's thwart the evil, and we get there and go, this evil is too evil for us. So again, Curse of Strahd, very, very tough, very, very it is written very openly, and you can go and do all the things, you know, like, they're not going to stop you from making mistakes. And because of that, it can sometimes be very frustrating. Last night was one of those frustrating moments where you meet NPC that you've been hunting for several sessions, and when you get a hold of them, they're like, meh, I can't help you. And you're like, what the hell have we been doing? But again, it ended on a really good note, and I'm hoping the next time we play, it will show that we are heading in the right direction. Let's see, I played some video games this week. I was gonna play Sea of Thieves earlier this week, but I logged in, got so far as to basically make my boat pretty. Like, I went to here's the sails I want, the cannons I want, the hull that I want, and then I fell asleep at the wheel and just sort of drove off into I ran into an island. But it was just one of those things where it's like, I woke, got everything pretty, raised my anchor, set sail towards adventure, woke up running into an island, was like, okay, I'm too tired to play this game, and then went to bed. I have been playing a little bit of MechWarrior 5 on the Xbox. One of my buddies reminded me that it was something that suddenly became available. My son is a huge fan of like giant robot, walking robot kind of things. He's played several other games like Armored Core or I can't remember. There's a game on Xbox Live that is basically like BattleTech, but you're fighting against aliens. And I tried to explain to him that BattleTech is like the original, like Robotech / BattleTech is the original thing, and he should really get into it. Well, they finally opened up a BattleTech game. It's kind of buggy. It's kind of choppy. Lots of load screens, and the tutorial on it does a good job of teaching you how to run your mech. It does a terrible job of teaching you how to run your business. Since it's the Mercenaries game, it's all about filling out contracts and taking orders and paying to repair your mechs and upgrade your mechs. It's just the tutorial is great for of showing you how to run your mech, how to run your business. There's a lot of trial and error, and I hope that I'm doing okay. I got to play a little bit of that earlier this week, so that was fun. Do a little painting. Took on a super cool commission from a client. It just showed up. It's still in the box. Actually, I haven't gotten it out to start priming it or anything yet. But super cool. It is so Warhammer 40,000. Everybody's, if you're familiar with like the Imperial forces, you're familiar with the Baneblade chassis, which is this very big tank. It's a huge tank. Well, Games Workshop built multiple different vehicles off of the Baneblade chassis. You know, there's the Forged Shadow Sword and the Hellhammer and all. There's just, I want to say, like 7 or 8 different things that you can make out of this particular kit. Well, someone much smarter than myself figured out, if you put a piece of sprue here, if you put a piece of sprue there, you put magnets here, you use slightly thicker than normal primer here so it has a good static fit, you can make all 8 of these tanks out of one kit, almost like a transformer. If obviously you got to know which versions to do where, which piece to turn around, where it fits, that kind of thing. But my client made one of those. He made basically an 8 tank kit, and super cool, super rad. And he wants that painted as like the centerpiece for his army. So I get to go ahead and paint a Baneblade kit, but all of the turrets, all of the pieces, some of the individual pieces flip inside outside, so I have to paint both sides of those. It's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be a very fun kit to paint. I'm finishing up before I break it out, and it's because it's gonna dominate my paint desk for at least a couple of weeks. I know that. But before I do that, I was finishing up some terrain for Secret D&D project, and for my oddly enough, my first 4 cobbled together models for my orc force. So I don't know if I'm sure I mentioned it, and I know it's on my my Amazon wish list. Some of the parts, the Snagaboys for 40K, basically very heavy bionics and squig, like squig related orc tribe or clan. I don't know what our clan. I think so. They've announced that that's the next big thing for the orcs, and so I started picking up bits and pieces of what I would build if I were to make a Snagaboys force. And one of the things that I found in my meanderings about looking for different conversion bits and to be completely honest, things that I can print to add to existing models, conversion kit pieces, things like that. And I found things to add to other bits and sprues and spare parts and whatnot to make the mini Grot tanks, which are basically little tiny tanks about yay big that have like a 1 or 2 little Gretchen inside, little goblins that I mean, they're not they're not game winners by any stretch, but they're fun-looking models, and I went ahead and got mine put together and did my conversions and whatnot, and I'm getting some paint on them real quick because they'll paint fast, I'm sure. But one of the things I do want to do when it comes to the Snaggaboys is I'm going to try my best to kind of... I'm not so full of myself to say that I will not buy models if I haven't painted everything yet. That's just silly, because I want to be able to play with them. But I will say this: I'm going to do my best to try and paint as I go. You know, when I have an opportunity, paint a squad here, paint a squad there. Don't go overboard until I, like, don't go, all right, dropping $500. Here's my entire army, because now that'll sit there being a gray plastic for a long time. I'm going to try and kind of paint a squad or two, or if I paint one squad, that gives me an opportunity to buy another one, that kind of thing. But so that's that. And that's been kind of fun so far. But as soon as I get done with those Grot tanks, I gotta. That commission's going to take all of my painting time for a while. I also got to run to the game store and get the colors that I know that I'm going to need for that big of a project. But that's fun. Yeah. Aside from that, watch some cool TV stuff. Watch some cool movies. It is normal everyday life of Bryan. But yeah, so that's pretty much where we're at there. Getting into the actual topic of today. So this comes from, I mentioned that I'm working on the Shadowrun book. The Shadowrun. I'm working on another Shadowrun novel. This topic comes from the fact that someone involved with that novel, I'm not getting into the particulars of it because I'm not sure if it's covered under the NDA. I don't know. But basically, someone involved with the story planning, the arc planning of that novel, went ahead and bought and read Tourist Trap. Look, is my name. Speaking of which, the Amazon link to buy physical copies of Tourist Trapped is in the description. They went ahead and read Frame Job, which had my novella in it for Rude, my big troll street samurai. And they read Tourist Trapped. Obviously, they can't read the short story prequel to Tourist Trapped because it's not out yet. But they had some. They wanted to basically get an idea, a first-hand view, so to speak, of how I write, how my style, that kind of thing. And they reached out to me recently and said, very cool, happy with your project, or happy with your work. The actual work itself is super great, but here I've got a couple of critiques. It's no secret Bryan has had some words about the world of movie and literary critics, product critics. It would be disingenuous of me to say that I enjoy what critics do. I wish there were more reviewers. Reviewers are people that take a look at a product, tell you the facts, maybe give their opinion a little bit, but for the most part, they just sort of lean heavy on facts, lean heavy on their experience, and that's it. They don't offer how-tos. They don't offer what you need to do to fix it. They definitely don't dive in the deep end of hyperbole and try and get clicks or views or readers or subscribers because of the colorful prose that they are using to destroy someone's product. That is what when I see someone that says that when they say, well, I'm a movie critic, my first thought, my knee jerk is, you go out of your way to be a jerk about other people's creative outlets. And maybe that's on me. Maybe I shouldn't view things that way. I could probably do an entire episode on critics and reviews. But when someone says I'm a movie reviewer, my thoughts generally are a little more positive. I'm like, oh, okay, you actually are trying to you look at the bits and pieces, and you trying to explain why this movie is what it is. Not I hate it and so should you. Because that's what a lot of critiques and critics do. So this particular person involved with the new Shadowrun book reaches out, and he's got a couple of comments about Tourist Trapped. And why this becomes a thing today is because in Tourist Trapped, there are some things that happen with the main character and with you know, some of the side characters that in the current written game rules for the world that this is set in, there's not a way initially for the characters to be doing some of the things that they can do. Or if you had not bought a certain product, you might not know that that's something that they are capable of. And it is one of those things where this person commenting this particular critique is it bothers me. I'm quoting them. It bothers them when the lore does not match the game, and I get it. I'm very similar. I generally am kind of very in the same sort of mentality when it comes to certain things. Hell, excuse me. It's part of the reason why I feel Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, when it comes to the Star Wars saga, falls a little flat at the end. There's a bunch of extra stuff that they throw in there that doesn't seem to fit the existing canon. It seems really weird. Well, when you look at it in a broader spectrum, is everything at some point is new canon. No matter what, you know, at some point the Force was new. You know, back in 1977, first time New Hope came out, no one knew about the Force because it had not existed before. In this instance, no one knew about the whole, you know, being able to kind of transport items through the Force back and forth. You know, no one knew about how to bridge the gap over, you know, tens of thousands of light years using this kind of like Force connection thing. You know, that's never been a thing, and Last Jedi made it a thing, and whether or not we like it, it's now a thing. And it wasn't canon before. It wasn't something that was capable of being done before. In the case of in game terms, it wasn't a rule before. But sorry about that. We had a weird technical snafu. I'm not sure what happened, but my camera was just like, nah, stop. So what I was saying is, you know, that stuff that happened in Star Wars or whatever, if you want to pull it out and turn it into game terms, those weren't rules yet. That source book hadn't come out yet. They had not revealed that was a, you know, maybe that was a Disney / Lucas / Star Wars Dave Filoni house rule. Whatever the case may be, it wasn't something that had existed at that time for mass consumption, and becomes that way later on. That's kind of what I had to tell this person involved with the new book, is yes, there are things that happen in Tourist Trap that when you go, I play a lot of Shadowrun, I've played it for years, that's not something that can happen. You need to add yet at the end, because games are always evolving, the worlds are always changing, and there's always something that could be added in the future. You know, if you wanna get down to it, someone who's been playing D&D, D&D 3rd edition forever or whatever, and then suddenly, you know, someone says, well, you know, I've been playing D&D for 20 years, and there's no such thing as Dragonborn. Well, there weren't then. There are now. That's something that has been added. It's something that has become canon. And even when you go back and read, a lot of times, when they're like, well, this has been added, it's not a fixed point in time. It's not that Dragonborn on December 1st, 2562, Greyhawk, the year of our Lord in Greyhawk, this is when Dragonborn became available. It's more along the lines of, when the information about Dragonborn comes out, they do what's called a retcon, or a continuity shift, or sometimes it's just maybe you didn't, not everybody knew this was the case, and now they do. They've added things to the history that you're supposed to, as a player, or as a reader, or as a fan, or as a viewer, you are supposed to go, okay, this has now been made aware to me, and it is part of the greater world. It is part of the lore. It is part of the universe. It is part of all of this. I just wasn't aware of it before. And sometimes it is a point of order. Sometimes it is a chronological stamp. I was talking about BattleTech earlier. There's a lot of stuff. BattleTech is a perfect example. They don't really change the past. They just always, every book pushes the story forward a little bit. Every book moves us a few years down the road. And while they may reveal things about the past, they don't generally like wholesale change things or go, okay, everybody already knew this, we just didn't tell you about it, reader. It's more along the lines of, more past has been uncovered, or something new has changed. The future is now. And as a game, BattleTech did a really good job of basically putting dates on most things that was like, okay, if you are playing this particular BattleTech game and it's taking place in this particular year, because this is the time in the canon and whatever that you are used to, this is the place that you're used to being in, that these are the mechs available, these are the vehicles available, these are the weapons available. And it's not to say that, like, oh, hey, because these weren't available or these other ones aren't available, that, like, they're broken or anything like that, or, like, too good or whatever. It just means that, chronologically speaking, if you want to stay up with the history of the world, you don't use those things because they haven't been invented yet. Or if you do use those things, you go ahead and say, all right, well, obviously we're playing in this time frame, not this time frame. So that was something that BattleTech did, is that they put timestamps on everything, to explain when stuff happens, when new versions of old things are advanced, when new political factions appear, that kind of thing. And while that can get a little confusing, especially for new players, it still puts a defined parameter down. So if I look at someone and say, we are playing BattleTech in the year 3060, they know exactly what's available to them. They know they're not going to come to the table with their battle mech from the 3068 book or whatever and go, all right, cool, I brought all this extra stuff. Or they're not going to build their own mech using a bunch of new weapons and stuff from future books, because we've specifically said this is the time and place. Stick to the lore. In the case of something like Tourist Trapped, where you're reading a story and they do something, they perform an action, or they unveil a power that you're like, whoa, that's crazy, that's never happened before, rather than going, they can't do that, and getting upset about it, you should go, whoa, I wonder if others can do that. Is this guy unique? Is this guy the singular character in this lore, this canon lore, that has this ability? Are we going to read more and realize that the reason why he's special, the reason why we're reading about this character, is because of that ability? Or is it more along the lines of, we're reading this story to help us understand that that ability is now a thing? And that's what today's topic really kind of came about, is deciding, yes, your house rules aside, you can always say, yes, we've read all the books, and we could say, let's say that I'm going to use Star Wars again, because I'm in the Star Wars mode. We can go ahead and do Star Wars and say that we're going to run a criminal game, a whole bunch of scum and villainy, and they go, oh, I want to be the guy that works for Darth Maul in the Crimson Dawn. And then the game master goes, you know what, I really hate the fact that they brought him back to life after Phantom Menace. I hate the fact that they gave him spider legs, and then they eventually gave him the Darksaber and all that stuff. Spoilers, by the way. These are that game master could basically say, at my table, his canon ends with him getting cut in half by Obi-Wan and falling down the power shaft. Now, what that does is that does invalidate a bunch of stuff that's already been written and shown in TVs and things like that. But as long as someone is honest about it, and someone is upfront and saying, in my world, this has not happened. In my game, this is not something we're using. Then, there's no right or wrong answer. From an outsider, you could go, well, yeah, but that's not canon. Only if you've not, if you haven't read everything, if you haven't seen Solo, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars cartoons, there are people out there that they've only seen the 9 saga movies. Period. Everything else to them, outside of those 9 movies, isn't canon, because they've never seen it. They might have heard about it. They may have seen a Facebook ad about it or something like that, but it's still in their dichotomy, in their world, that's not how it is. And that's one of the things that I think that's where fanbase toxicity comes from, is when someone says, your canon, because it's not my canon, is not only wrong, but you're stupid for having it, and you need to change, because you have to agree with me to make mine right. You could say, in that same sort of argument, goes, you know what, Dave Filoni, Lucas, Disney, they all agree with what, they put out all this information. They're the ones that are creating these stories. That's the canon as written, and that's what we're going to go with. There's nothing wrong with that. If, as a player, I go, God, I really hate that stuff, I'm going to go ahead and bow out, fine. You're not interested in playing with the full canon and everything that's available. You would much rather play a slightly different version, or a limited version, or an older version, or whatever. That's on you, whatever we want to do. The difference being is the person who then says, I don't really want to play in your full canon universe. I don't recognize that stuff. I've only seen the nine movies. Okay, and then turns around and goes on their Facebook page, or goes to the local game store or whatever, and just trash talks the fact that this game master is running their game with all of this Crimson Dawn stuff, and Darth Maul's alive, and it, just because you have not read it yet, just because you don't agree with it, or just because you haven't seen it in what you consider to be canon, doesn't make it not viable, doesn't make it not a good story point, doesn't make it not a cool tool that could be interested as a greater canon event or ability or footnote or whatever in the future. And I think that's one of the things that has really plagued the creative media the media industry, the creative industry, the video game industry, definitely the gaming industry, is people get so caught up in being the information age has made it so if I want to go, that TV show mentioned this character, I'm going to go Google them on my phone and find out what's up with that character, and then it gives me all this information and a bunch of other links to go to or whatever. is what ends up happening is, as fans, we have access to so much stuff about the things we care about. We have to set our expectations to a certain point and go, okay, this is where I like my story, or this is where I draw the line. Or you go, you know what, me personally, I can't stand The Last Jedi. It has a couple cool scenes, but I think as a movie, I think it's awful. It hurts the franchise way more than it helps, in my opinion. But I can't look at it like some of the toxic fan base has and been like, I'm going to fill out my signature form and my change.org to get them to change that, to get them to get rid of it. Come on, guys. It's canon. We might not like it, but it is. It's what has been created in this universe. And for us, if we discuss it, maybe we just don't focus on that kind of thing. And if someone brings it up and is like, well, you know, Yoda could have done this or blah 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 because the things that they've shown us in future novels, or in Last Jedi they showed us this thing, why didn't he do this? Because it wasn't available yet. That information wasn't there. Those powers had not been put down on paper yet. No one had said this is something that is available. And it's the same way if you're reading stories or watching movies or watching cartoons or whatever. In an official capacity, if you see something, you should go, oh, wow, okay, that's something that, oh, man. Rather than being like, God, I hate that, they should get rid of it, I'm going to ignore it from here on out, because that's not going to help you. You should instead maybe look at it and go, whoa, how is that going to affect the rest of the world? Has it always been this way? If it's not, this is new. How are they going to know? You know, why is this guy famous because of this? You know, what's going on? Is you got to look at it in a different light. And hopefully the end result is a tighter package, a tighter project, a tighter world that, yeah, you might not like everything. I cannot stand Ahsoka. She bugs the living snot out of me. I don't like her as a character. I think Rosario Dawson did a great job with her live action, and I think that she did get better as a character as the Clone Wars moved on, the animated series moved on. I still don't care for her as a character. I hate the fact that she, spoilers, that she managed to defeat 4 different Sith Lord or related Sith people that we've seen defeat way tougher opponents than Ahsoka, but because she's got plot armor and because Dave Filoni thinks that she's amazing, suddenly this character is able to do things that, realistically speaking, within the canon of the story, she shouldn't be. And it turns into, well, the plot required it. And while I hate it when the plot requires a character I don't like to suddenly be elevated, or a character I do like, or a power that I like, or an event that I like to get downplayed in order to lift someone else up. These are things that make me crazy, but I have to, I can't just turn away from it and go, that didn't happen, or that's I can't just ignore it, because it's still part of the story. It is still part of the greater the greater knowledge base that is that set of lore. And that's, I think, what this episode is about, is sometimes we have to look at something and decide, okay, it was different in the it's different in the story, it was different in the movie, it was different in the cartoon, it was different because they haven't made it a rule yet, or because they haven't unveiled why that is yet. And sometimes we may never get the payoff. We may never actually get to know why these characters do these things, or why this is something that that the story required, and why is that a big deal, and why is this character doing this thing? And the answer isn't always, well, the plot needed it. Sometimes it is because the writer, the creator, the team, or whatever thought that that would be a really cool way to lean, a really cool way to add something to the world, and then just no one else ran with it. That happens. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Is we could, you know, if you wanted to, you could make it corporate. You could make it, well, Disney didn't want it this way because of this, or Kathy Kennedy said this, or Dave Filoni said this, or whatever. That's fine. But at the end of the day, what has been created, what is in front of us, what you have been exposed to, is your personal canon. And that's not to say that you can look at your personal canon and look at someone else's canon and go, well, mine's better because I hate Jar Jar, or mine's better because of this, that, and the other thing. Or, even worse, you can't look at it and go, well, I've figured it out and this is how it really is. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Don't pay attention to the actual game or the actual media or anything. This is how it is. Because that's not going to help you either. What we really need to do is basically come to terms with the fact that sometimes the lore changes the canon, or sometimes in the case of games, the rules alter the lore. Just as often as sometimes the lore, then later on someone goes, oh man, we need to make rules for that because it's been introduced. You can't say this doesn't exist or this can't happen because of the creators, the official creators. And I'm not talking about fan fiction. I'm not talking about, you know, at your homebrew or at your house rules. I'm saying the actual people who own and they make the official changes and stuff to the licenses, to the canon, the world as it may be. If they say this is a thing, if they show that this is a thing, it might be a super unique thing. It might be a one out of a million mutants does this thing. But it's real. And it does exist. And we can't just discount it because in our game tables, in our games, and in our view, that's the case. Because at the end of the day, the actual creators, the people who are hired, paid, licensed, whatever, to do that creation, they're the ones that are making the canon. They're the ones that are making it so. You can have it however you want in your head. You can have it however you want at your table. But when it really comes down to it, the creator itself is the one that has final say. It's easy as that. All right, I've ranted long enough. I'll let you guys go so you can go have a good time. Get vaccinated if you aren't already. It's cool. I'll say this. I went someplace. When I went inside, I had my mask on, but I was able to go hang out on the patio without one. This weekend, I got my first board game night with my friends. Like in person, we're going to spend all day playing Twilight Imperium. Super psyched. We're getting there. We're getting close. Don't be foolish. Get yourself vaccinated. Wear a mask when you think that it's a good idea, especially if you think that you're going to be around people who haven't been fully vaccinated yet, because you don't want to be a bounce. You don't want to be, you don't want to carry that to the next person. Go out there, have a good time, enjoy yourselves, enjoy the summer has started to turn into a palpable thing, an enjoyable thing. Get out there, play some games, because I want to know that you're having a good time. I want to know that you aren't just wading through life, that you are forging your own narrative, that you are making things happen, and that you are having a good time. So get out there, play some games. I'll see you next week.